the Baen Free Radio Hour.
Hello and welcome to the Baen Free Radio Hour. Today we bring you the second half of Griffin Barber's interview with Baen's summer lineup of fantasy authors, where we have Wen Spencer, Kacey Ezell, A.C. Haskins, Marisa Wolf, and Melissa Olthoff speaking to us about their amazing novels you'll go feral for. After that, we bring you part 13 of the serialization of Mark Van Name's John and Lobo novel, One Jump Ahead.
Nice.
Aaron, please invite me. Thank you so much. I'll bring my own dice.
Have you ever played Changeling, Aaron?
No, I have not. I've heard about
I
it.
love Changeling.
Yeah.
Love it.
That's something I think you should be a shoe-in to.
No, I haven't gotten, there's so many games that I
I don't know if it's a presently supported game. I think it's only in the previous edition, and it's been kind of lying fallow for a bit. So hopefully Renegade Game Studios will get it together and start doing that. But so I'm starting to suspect that there's a common theme here. We've already talked a little bit about how inspirational Anne McCaffrey's work was, but I wanted to know what drove each of you to such madness. And by madness, I mean to write such amazing novels. Anyone?
I read all
Sure,
the
I'll
really
start.
cool books, and I wanted more, but there was no more. Of course, this was back when you just had whatever little library down the street you had when you lived out in the sticks. The internet is a wonderful thing, and a dangerous thing too, because my whole if you want more, you have to write it. Won't be there for people that in the future is like, well, if you want more of the ponies, there is more, and if you want something more of dragons, you can find it.
Yeah, and that community is a great thing in many ways, but in that one small sliver of a very important life, it is not. Yeah, it's a challenge.
Because that was one of the harder things about the current fanfic, was walking away and doing your own thing. Because there's such a instant feedback when you wrote something of, people are like, oh, cool, let me read it. Oh, that was really cool. Let's sit and talk about it, which is so much ego too. And it's almost like a drug.
Yes, it is. For sure.
To walk away from that and go, okay, here's something totally me. It's hard.
That's scary. Yeah.
Yeah, and everybody's like, well, why? Why?
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Marisa?
Oh, me. Well, so the big picture of why do I write is Pern fan fiction. I wrote a letter to Anne McCaffrey when I was 12 that I had written a novel in her world, and she was like, that's adorable. I can't know anything about it. My agent took it all out. Go write your own shit. And I was like, oh yeah, good call. It took me 20 more years before I did go write my own shit, but here we are. It's all Casey's fault. We've talked about that before.
Not all my fault.
That was a little bit. And I'm very grateful to her for that. This specific book is a 4-part series, you guys. Part 1, I was on a deadline for an entirely different project about 4 years ago, and I ran into the Cheapside Horde, which is a real thing that happened in London, England, where a bunch of construction workers were taking down some abandoned old houses. They found like untold treasure from the 1600s, split it peacefully amongst themselves, and had an epic night drinking on the town. The man who later founded the British Museum of History and Looting went ahead and heard about it. Like somebody like ran to his house and was like, oh my God, this stuff is happening. And he was like, what? And so Home Dude goes out to like the place where the construction workers were drinking, which I find hilarious. And like another epic night or two collecting all of the gems. So I fell into this rabbit hole. I wrote like a bunch of words about like, what if it was magic? Because of course I did. And then I went and did the thing that I actually had a deadline for. And then another couple of years went by and I was like, oh yeah, what about that thing I thought about? And I suddenly had a character, and then I knew what was happening to her. And so I wrote like the first couple of pages. I read the first page at a writing seminar and got incredibly good feedback on it. Like just people loved it. And then I went, this might have happened in a different order, but I went to Jonathan Mayberry's writing a good first page thing, and I rewrote the whole page. That is the order it happened in. That happened first. Then I read that page that I had written in like 20 minutes at this first page seminar, and people were obsessed. And then I waited another year and wrote the book. So it just, I knew Seema fell like a house ate her. I knew that, and she found treasure. And then everything else just kind of developed in the back of my head until I talked to Tony about writing a fantasy novel. And then I wrote it really fast, potentially because it marinated in my brain for 4 years, potentially because I'm a crazy person, and potentially
These things
because
can be true.
I have potentially also as well, because I have equally crazy friends who encouraged me on that journey.
Some combination of the center of that Venn
maybe theoretically. So
Multiple factors.
It's a little bit, but yeah, that's where it came from. Also, as evidenced by multiple things today, I love shiny treasure, and so I could work it into a story and describe some of it in very loving detail. So
For sure.
Yeah.
Melissa?
So when I was in 7th grade, I'm going way back here, we don't
we
do
were.
math, but 7th grade, I had to do a book report. And my lovely teacher accurately pointed out that I could not do my book report on Animorphs or Thoroughbred or Goosebumps. Rude.
I mean, accurately pointed out, snobbishly pointed out.
I mean, but she was very cool. She's like, okay, clearly you like sci-fi and fantasy stuff. Go to the library, go to the bookstore, whatever, go to the adult section. So I did. And I found Anne McCaffrey's Dragonflight, and I found Mercedes Lackey and Larry Dixon's The Black Griffin. And those two books were foundational because everything I read after that, outside of once I finished devouring Dragon Rise of Pern, like as it stood then, and Valdemar, I'm like, I need to find more adult stuff. This is amazing. So fast forward, however many years, again, we don't do time math, but I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, and like Kacey, I'm like, well, crap, I can't actually be a dragon rider, but I can join the Air Force and I could try to fly planes. I was a pilot for a hot minute before my ears went, nope, you ain't doing this. So I got medically disqualified, which kind of sucked, but it also worked out for the best because I met my husband. All these things, awesome things happened, right? Fast forward again, and there's the Baen Fantasy Adventure Award contest. Y'all, I went to bed like 7 days before that contest ended feeling very smug. I am not entering this year. I don't have to stress. I have no ideas. It's fine. And then I woke up with a Griffin in my head, yapping away the next morning. I'm like, I will write down some notes for next year. 2 days later, I had a short story that I sent to Marisa. She yelled at me a lot. It was amazing. And then I submitted it and I came in second. And then I wrote a whole book based off that short story. So I took the concept of what if you were supposed to be a pilot, i.e. a dragon rider, and then things went wrong and you ended up in an entirely different career field, hence Griffin.
The Griffin, yeah.
Also, I have voices in my head, and if I don't write, I go crazy.
Girl, whomst amongst
us.
I think there might be an on the end of that for all of us.
Crazy.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Kacey?
Yeah. So true confession. One of my sort of, guilty pleasure reading habits is I enjoy reading reverse harem romances. But the thing about it is that I'm going to speak in generalities, so there are definitely exceptions to this, but generally speaking, most dudes don't really want to share their partner with another guy, right? But what I enjoy about the series, about the genre, is that it's not only the romantic bond between, the female main character and her male counterparts, but it's also there's always some kind of bond between the male characters. Sometimes it's a romantic bond too, but the ones that I really enjoy tend to be like the brotherhood bonds that are usually forged by extreme circumstances, like brothers in arms, or we're police partners, or something like that. And so I was asking myself, what would be a reason where it would make sense for you know, dudes of the type that are my favorite, which tend to be very competent, very, very traditionally masculine, alpha type dudes, what would make sense for them to have this kind of brotherhood bond and yet still be willing to be in a relationship with the same woman, right? And the answer was magic. And so that opened up a whole host of other questions about things like morality and consent and, what really is affection and love and what is just magic, right? And so I paired that with a sorceress who has been told all her life that she is no good and believes it up until the beginning of the story. And that's how Mage Light came to be. So it was very much like Melissa described and very much like Wen described, in that once I had these concepts, the characters were like, oh, hey, yeah, I'm here. I've been here the whole time. Now you finally caught up. Let's get working. You know what I mean? So,
Very
yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
And you, Aaron, what drove you to the madness?
A contract.
Here we are.
Oh, so
Very
the
nice.
first book came out. All right. Backing way up. My parents are huge readers, and I grew up reading, as previously mentioned, Anne McCaffrey and Mercedes Lackey and all the great classics of fantasy and sci-fi. David Weber was a huge influence on me, and now I've got a blurb from him on my back cover, and that's awesome. And I'm still squealing like a fangirl.
That's amazing.
Isn't that a good feeling?
Yeah. Yeah. So I grew up on fantasy and sci-fi, and I wrote my first sci-fi novella as a class project in 11th grade. It was not good. I've still got a copy if anyone doesn't believe me. It's not good, but it was a thing. And then didn't do much for a while, and then I was in Beast Barracks at West Point, and the final Harry Potter book came out, and I couldn't read it for 6 weeks. And so I just started writing my own story. And again, it wasn't good. But it was writing, it was fantasy, and it gave me something to do for a while. And I got about halfway through that. I eventually gave up on it. I graduated West Point. I was in basic officer leadership course, learning to be an armor officer. And I was watching Castle because I'm a huge Nathan Fillion fan. It's the first season of Castle.
Yeah.
And I was like, I could write a mystery book. I think I could write a mystery novel. I think I could do that. And I started to write it, and I realized that I was bringing in all sorts of weird fantasy stuff into it. And I ended up writing about the first 3 chapters and sent it to my friend, my best friend Phil, for his thoughts. And he goes, dude, you've rewritten Harry Dresden. And at this point, I had never read Harry Dresden, so I picked up a copy of Stormfront and was like, son of a bitch. I have rewritten the first 3 chapters of Stormfront.
Got it. The building was
so
on
I set
fire.
it aside for a
wasn't my
while,
fault.
and eventually, when I was in Afghanistan, I got back to it because I was really bored and had a lot of free time. I'm
sensing a theme.
Yeah. No, and at this point, I was like, all right, I need to actually figure out how I make this unique and interesting. And so I set out to make my character explicitly not Harry Dresden. He's an alcoholic. He hates people. He's 200 plus years old, and
People.
he's good with technology. So I wrote Not Harry Dresden mystery novel, and I started working on that for a while, and then eventually I went to Dragon Con enough and kind of fell in with the Baen crowd enough that I became friendly with Tony, and she invited me to send her something when I had it done. And I sent her a thing, and she emailed me back a few months later and said, hey, I'm not going to buy this, but let's sit down at Dragon Con and I'll give you notes.
Nice.
And she went page by page through my manuscript, and I revised it based on that feedback, sent it back to her, and she bought it, right after that. And then before it came out, she offered me a contract for another 3 books. So then I had to figure out what the hell I was going to do next. And
Wait, what are we doing?
here we are with this one.
Nice.
This one kind of came out of a lot of philosophy reading, hence the weird, trippy chapter about what is the nature of reality and God and all that kind of stuff. And then also, yeah, like what wouldn't it be fun to have a giant zombie battle with my friends?
And one of the things I dug about the progression in his story is between the Blood and Whispers and Blood and Fate is we have this really kind of rage-filled, feeling sorry for himself character.
I'll tell you, that's the part that I started in Afghanistan, and a lot of that came out of personal experience. I was very cynical and pissed off.
And it's very authentic.
Yeah.
It's very authentic. And then you get into the next book, and he's moved past some of the things, but they have triggered other things. So when you start
he hasn't dealt with it. That was, I think, the big piece of it was like, I wrapped up the first book, and he's now got some friends, and he's starting to come to terms with what's happened to him. But he hasn't actually confronted it. He's just like, oh, well, now I've gotten closure, so I'm moving on. And like, no, you still have to heal, motherfucker. And so there's a line in the second book where his friend is like, the fact you can't hear how much that screams therapy is why you need therapy, Gwen.
Oh, I love it. So many people need to hear that sentence.
Yeah, so it was a lot of fun to write. But no, the first book, like I can still point at the exact passage that I wrote like the day after I had my hand inside the chest of an Afghan soldier who'd gotten hit by an IED. Like I was very cynical and depressed and angry, and like a lot of that bled through into the character.
Yeah.
At the same time, I tried very hard to make him not a Mary Sue by making him a character no one in their right mind would ever want to be.
Yeah, and that was that was one of the things I was trying to get to was the authentic nature of it and the fact it's never a slog, because his it's not it's not torture porn. It's not let's just keep going on the same thing. It's more this is very authentic, and his coping mechanisms are also very authentic.
Yeah,
and
I
everything
like sci-fi and fantasy as a subject because it allows you to write about things that are real by abstracting away all of the things that you want to.
Yep.
Like, I don't want to write about the real world, but I want to write about real people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing, and Marisa alluded to this earlier too. The thing that is present in all of the books that I've read, and I'm confident it's in Wen's book as well, even if it's a little gentler than how Aaron presents it, is that character progression, real people's growth is never linear, right? It's always, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or, 3 steps, or, 1 step forward, 3 steps back, right? Like it's fits and starts, and it's side quests, and that's one of the things that makes us layered, complex individuals. And all of the characters in these books, and I'm assuming Wen's, but that's true of Wen's of the characters in Wen's other work that I've read, right? Is that these are characters who have that kind of progression. So it feels real because it isn't a straight linear curve of, oh, I'm bad at this, now I'm good at this, now I'm better at this, now I'm the best at this thing, which has its place in some facets, but when it comes to like internal personal growth, that's not how humans are, right?
Yeah, and that was the thing for me was, again, Aaron's first responders and military folks are trained to respond with for the given result. We want this result. This is your response. This is how you deal with that situation, which makes them highly effective in those arenas. But the emotional distress that some of these things can cause is always deferred. And it will eventually come out.
And trying to deal with it is often looked down upon. Like there's a stigma associated with even
because you're no longer
actually dealing with it.
Yeah, you're no longer A to B to C, which is the solution set for everything that confronts you. You're no longer A to B to C. You're like C and CE, CEA, B. You're kind of all over the place in that arena. Yeah. And it's difficult for people that are in the thing and not suffering the stress right then to understand it.
Yeah.
And that's one of the beauties in Wen's work. She's got high schoolers, and high schoolers are going through all of this on hard mode.
Oh my gosh, all of it.
Yeah.
And so it naturally is going to lead itself to that. It's, because you can't show to somebody who you think is just soaring through life without any problems. You can't show to them how vulnerable you're made to feel by whatever's going on.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're going to have those things going on. So it's always a great character study, and I enjoy that, as Aaron said, that yeah, my worlds are artificial and fictional and etc. They make sense according to the rules that I've written for them. But the people are people.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mine your own personal experiences a lot. One of the things I have in the second book was he's at a new school and is trying to remember, how did you make friends? Because he had been in the same school all of his life, and now this is the first time where he's surrounded by new people, and he's like, I don't remember how I got to be friends with those people. I need to make friends. I really, really need to make friends, because I've got this werewolf thing that's like emotional roller coaster. I need to have stability here. But I don't really remember how I got to be friends with the people I hung out with at my old high school. We just all ended up sitting together at lunchtime. And that's actually my childhood. I had the same friends all through school, but I don't remember how we first met or why we ended up being friends and sitting at the same lunch table.
So I said mine too, because of the moving piece, right? Like, my parents were also in the military, and growing up moving around, that anxiety that comes with, like, oh snap, I've got to walk into this new environment and I've got to find people to hang out with. Like, that's real, and it's like panic inducing almost, and so, like, gosh, I can't imagine having to do it. And also,
and you're a werewolf.
Deal with being a werewolf.
Yeah, right? Which is why teenage werewolves are so good, because it's such a metaphor for just like, oh my God, you're feeling all your feel. Like, I taught middle school.
Yes.
And that first week of being a middle school teacher, I was like, why did I do this? This is the worst. Middle school is awful. Like, they're feeling everything. And now I'm someone's 7th grade teacher? Gross. But then it's also like the best time, because they're feeling all their feelings, and it's like, I don't know, it's such a cool time, especially when you're not a parent, you're a teacher or a mentor or a crazy aunt. It's really great. Strongly recommend.
It's also really great being the parent of a middle schooler, but it is also very much like, oh, you're a werewolf right now.
Correct. Yeah. That happens in the classroom too.
Are you taking notes, Aaron?
Yeah, get ready.
I still got a few years on that one, and I think we're actually planning on homeschooling until high school. So there's some of that.
No, we homeschool too, and that's why I get the werewolf.
Yeah, it's true.
You get all of the werewolf. Yeah.
Sometimes it's nice to have a team. Yeah. I think one of the things I really love about writing and also reading, when there are themes, like Kacey was saying, these aren't really preachy books, and they're not, because I also hate capital H, capital all caps. I hate a preachy book.
Right. If I want a preachy book, I'll go read scripture.
Yeah, like, and I won't. So here we are. Like, no thanks. But I was at a convention this last weekend when we're recording this. Melissa and I were just at JordanCon, and I was on this really, really great fantasy panel where the mentor was like pulling out, not the mentor, the moderator felt like a mentor. The moderator was pulling out
That's
themes.
a damn fine moderator.
He was an incredible moderator, like easily top 5 that I've experienced, but very different, right? So he was pulling out themes. There were 3 authors on the panel.
Need to know more intensifies.
I know, right? We'll talk about it later. You're still in the top 3, Griffin. Let's be clear.
Just so we're clear on that.
Be sure
you're just number 3. Be aware of that.
No, he might be 1 or 2. I haven't actually ranked them. I just know about where they go. Anyway, this dude was able, in pretty quick succession, to pull out themes for all 3 of the books represented by the 3 authors speaking. on the panel. And one he pulled out, and I was like, holy shit, that is a theme of my book. What? Like, I didn't do that on purpose. That's a whole thing. And it was like a two-parter because he's like, it feels like the past is like an actual character in all of these books. And I was like, how dare you? Because in a plague of magic, it's 400 years after the cataclysm. Like, magic ended the world. Civilization has just scraped itself back up together again, like enough to start to think about like what's going on out there. Magic is still outlawed. It's a whole thing. And the other piece of that is the government, the people in power have a different opinion of what the past was versus what they give to the people of their city. And so he's like, yeah, I noticed this like disconnect with the past and like the present and the narrative. And I was like, you how dare you? This is definitely nothing I've experienced in real life. This is definitely not a thing that I am apparently trying to process through my book. But I love that about writing. Like, much like we need our characters to process some things they might need to process. Often writers are processing things too, either consciously or unconsciously. And that is a super fun level of depth, especially when someone like pulls things out of your book, either an incredible moderator at a panel or this incredibly insightful editor who's like, oh, I think you're doing this thing. And then you just feel like so seen. And sometimes it's really uncomfortable, but it's also very cool because then like, so specifically Griffin, as an editor, not a moderator this time, was able to pull things out of my book that I was like, holy shit, you noticed that I did that? Or holy shit, I did that. Like, and you
I
just
totally meant to do that.
totally meant to do that. And you just feel
Yeah.
so seen. And that is like one of the really special things I think between readers and authors. When like something really resonates for you in a story and you're able to share that back with an author, whether they meant to do that thing or not, I don't know. It's just a really cool, like, it's a cool way to process things, you guys. We're in it together. I don't know.
It's also
Yeah.
a little bit scary because I had one family get hold of me and did in Elf Home, you had this guy do I will take the responsibility of raising these children, even though they're not related to me, because it needs to be done and somebody has to do it. And I'm available. And this family was, well, we had relatives whose children were going to go into foster care and somebody had to step forward and we weren't going to do it. But then we read your book and we decided to go ahead and adopt these.
Oh my God, my
Whoa.
whole heart.
And I'm like,
That's a lot. That's heavy.
When that is amazing.
Oh, that is scary and amazing all at once.
Yes, both.
yeah.
Oh,
That's cool.
wow.
Inspirational.
Man.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that, that speaks to the, how most people consume it is you wrote it down, your thoughts, and then somebody reads your thoughts and they translate them into their thoughts.
Their thoughts,
And there
yeah.
is no
Their experience. Yeah.
If I ever get a fan to come up to me and be like, because of your book, I went to therapy, like that's success.
That's a big
the best
win.
I can hope
Or
for
I got
out of
sober.
this.
Or
Or I
not
got
That's a
sober.
big
Yeah.
takeaway from this is go to therapy, guys.
Good. Therapy is good, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for the first Griffin Court tattoo. I think there's going to be one. Somebody's going to be like, yo, look at this.
I think
Fun
you
story.
should get the first Griffin Cork tattoo,
Fun,
Griff.
fun story.
Melissa's gonna get it, but
I don't do tattoos.
I do. I absolutely do tattoos. So I was talking with a group of people at JordanCon, including Marisa and Jody Lanai. Jody was amazing enough to read my book and blurb it. It's on the back cover. It's amazing. I screamed total fangirl, Erin. Like I was
I
full
know,
of
Pete.
fangirl. I get it.
Oh.
And we were talking tattoos because this other lady had these gorgeous tattoos. I'm like, yep, planning to get another one. I'm like, I need to get my Griffin. And Jody was like, yes, you do.
Like, you need to get Felix immediately. It was so cute.
Yep. I'm like,
Yeah.
he's gonna go right here. He's gonna be adorable. But Griffin, if you would like to get the first Griffin
No.
core tattoo, that would be I could
No,
make a
and
temporary one for you.
No.
Put it right in his face. Yeah.
Top of the head.
That's what I
How
need.
about
That's what
what I
this
wanna-
Space for Radio needs is a tattoo of a Griffin right on it.
what I can't wait for is
full
the
mantle.
Eau de Griffin,
parfum.
the Eau de Parfum, the Griffin, the
Griffin
Felix
scent.
scent Eau de Parfum.
That'll be good. Griffins on Griffins.
Yeah, there you go.
Griffins on Griffins.
Griffining.
The Griffining. Griffin's
So-
too. Electric Boogaloo.
To add on to how amazing Griffin is as an editor, I've said this more than once, but not only is he great at like those big themes, he's also excellent at the details. And he
Mhm.
very accurately pointed out that I had wonderfully described what a horse barn smells like, and horses, and hay, and all that stuff. Like, it was very well done. He's like, Melissa, what do griffins smell like? I'm like, oh, yeah, you're right.
I need to
Not
know.
include that. Feathers and fur is not a good enough description. So
Yeah, I mean it's one of those things that you find often in for me really good fiction, especially like crime fiction, is they drop in that smell and you're like, oh yeah, I got it right there. Like it's that triggered memories for me that should trigger for any reader, right? So
Yeah.
and I can't remember who it was who said it. I almost think it was Zelazny, but I don't think it was. Talking about, and then once I finish the book, I go back and I seed in smells every couple pages.
Yeah. That makes sense.
I'm probably wrong about it being Zelazny.
I'll be honest, after you and I went through our structural edit session, like line by line, and then I finally got them back to you and I sent them, and then I was like, son of a bitch, I forgot the smells.
Well, one of the things that's
Second round.
one of the things that's cool about an urban fantasy setting is everybody knows what a street smells like.
Yeah, but you don't know what a feast smells like in Valhalla.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah.
It smells like lightning and ozone, right?
Well, also to
And
be
mead.
clear,
Lots of honey.
yeah, a street in New Orleans in the summer on a Saturday smells differently than Boston after a rainy spring day, which is different than Manhattan, so like I think
Manhattan
it's
anytime, which just
anytime.
basically smells like piss.
I mean, that's a pretty common city smell, honestly. But yes, like there's layers. I got layers.
Yeah.
So we've talked about the driving to such madness, et cetera, and I think I hit everybody, didn't I?
Mhm.
Yeah. And so what most inspirational works or authors are sitting in your pantheon of people to read or people to suggest to other people? Obviously, we've got Anne McCaffrey for a couple of people on the panel.
I'm really big on Martha Wells, The Murder Bots. I just reread the entire series again.
So delightful.
Yeah, and Lois McMaster Bajol.
Yes.
Sorry.
I have my
very excited by the Vorkosigan saga.
I have the entire Vorkosigan saga shelf. Yes.
I am late to the Vorkosigan saga party, but I am so happy to be here working my way through that series. It is so good.
Yeah. I had my own fangirl blurb moment when Sharon Shin wrote me a blurb for Mage Light. So she's one of my favorite fantasy authors. I love the way that she does characters and relationships in fantasy. And also Guy Gavriel Kay, who he's written a bunch of fantasy, but probably my favorite work of his is a duology. It's Sailing to Sarantium and Lord of Emperors. I think it's called the Sarantine Mosaic is the series name. And it's like a fantasy version of the Byzantine Empire, and the twists and the political turniness and just his dramatic timing of when characters do certain things. It's a masterclass, and it was definitely an influence on some of the twists and reveals that I have going on in Mage Light.
Cool.
And also some of the seeds that I'm laying for later in the series. Hashtag foreshadowing.
I would add Raymond Feist and Janny Wirtz with the Richwolf Saga and then Daughter of the Empire.
Oh.
Those copies on my bookshelf are well worn.
Yeah.
And Jimmy the Hand was one of my favorite characters from the Rift War. And holy crap, you had to know I was going to go here. But with Plague of Magic, Seema has some serious Jimmy the Hand vibes. And for very good reasons. It starts at that street level. And I love her so much. And anybody
that what I love about that character, though, is that with less privilege than Jimmy the Hand.
Yep.
She's all the badass that Jimmy the Hand was without any of the privilege. Even to start with, like, because he was spoiler alert on a book that's 35 years old or 40 years old. But that Seema doesn't have the fact that her father was the guildmaster that we know of.
That we know.
Yeah.
And we, didn't get adopted by the royal crown, family, etc. So yeah, those are great books. Aaron, what about you?
So I just want to give a shout out to Raymond Feist. Thanks, Melissa, for mentioning that, because he was the first author that I remember reading who had a major economics plot line. Rise of a Merchant Prince.
Excellent.
Yes.
Like the main plot is centers around the invention of options trading, and that's amazing.
15-year-old me did not pick up on that plot.
Yeah, no. I didn't pick up on that either until I was
Layers.
like in my master's economics rereading the Rift War series, and I was just like, oh, actually, I think that's the Serpent War saga, but
Serpent
yeah,
War, yep.
Same general series,
Mhm.
and I was just like, oh yeah, that's awesome. And then on that same line, I recently read Seth Dickinson's The Traitor Baru Cormorant in that trilogy. And like that whole first book is, she's an accountant and centering on fractional banking and fractional reserve banking and paper currency, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. So yeah, just so the idea is that like you don't have to stick to what's been tried and true. If it wasn't in Tolkien, it doesn't mean you can't do it. That's a big piece of it. Like you can just bring in whatever you want, and just play around with it.
Did you on science fiction? Do you read much science fiction? Did you like Drake?
Yeah, no, I do, and yes, I absolutely have read Hammer Slammers and all anything that involves tanks. I'm all about. But no, I was actually gonna say my biggest ones, apart from the folks that have already been mentioned, Heinlein is a huge one for me. I often tell people, if you want to understand me as a person and you haven't read Heinlein's Glory Road, you're going to be behind the ball curve.
Are you looking for the roc's egg, Aaron?
Just yeah. Anyway, it's a dreary world, and I don't want it to be.
Yeah.
Asimov's Foundation series was a big one. The idea of future history was a huge piece of huge foundational piece of my idea or my thinking about like how you can go about writing a story. And then actually a lot of the fiction I've been reading recently has not been sci-fi or fantasy, it's been historical fiction. One of the biggest, and actually one of the reasons that I fell in love with David Weber's Honor Harrington series is because my dad got me reading the Horatio Hornblower series in middle school.
Nice.
And like that was a huge part of my formative years. And right now I'm actually rereading the kind of companion series to that Patrick O'Brien's Aubrey Maturin series. But yeah, and then prose wise, Patrick Rothfuss, I know a lot of people complain about him because he can't finish the damn series, and that's fair, but his prose is phenomenal.
Gorgeous.
And I can't say anything otherwise. Like just the imagery in it and the wording in it, and it stirs things up in me. And then this is one that's probably not common to this audience, but Mark Halperin is a phenomenal writer, and his book, Memoir from Ant-Proof Case, which if anyone here has not read it, it's the fictional autobiography of a madman.
Oh, nice.
And it is phenomenally well written. I read it. I reread it at least every 5 or 6 years, and every single time I get more out of it. Like I love that book.
That's one of the things.
Not at all sci-fi or fantasy. It's definitely
like
a modern contemporary historical fiction. It takes place in the 20th century, kind of between about 1910 and the 1980s. But yeah, it's so well written, right? And that is to me one of the top examples of prose that I've ever encountered.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to add on any of their titles, maybe outside the genre? Or
I haven't gone yet.
I'm sorry, Marisa.
That's okay. I was listening, and a lot of them were named. So I would add Ursula Le Guin and Octavia Butler, who both dealt with societal issues without ever, like, I never felt lectured to when I read them, and I would always like come away thinking like, oh dang.
Left Hand of
So
Darkness was
oh
yeah,
my
that was
God.
one of my that might be my dad's favorite book, and that was a big piece of my childhood.
Yeah, I took this really great class in college. It was it was speculative fiction, basically, of world literature. And so it was like how to look at different cultures through their science fiction and fantasy, and like what the fears were and what the hopes were. And I've never looked at speculative fiction the same after that. It was amazing. Um, but I will also add, like, early days would be like Andre Norton. Again, to the people we've already talked about, but like I would add Andre Norton in there, Jody Lynn Nye. Um, Super quick, small aside. Jody Lynn and I was at Jordan Con this last weekend. A friend of mine who we're trying to encourage in her nerdery was there, and I had a chance to a little bit fangirl at Jody, which was amazing, and talk about how like she was one of the foundational authors for me. And after she had left, my friend was like, "Okay, but you weren't serious," and I was like, "Yeah, I was." She's like, "She is not old enough to have been a foundational author for you," and I was like, okay, but I read her book, so maybe she was really young when she got published. Like, I don't know. And Katie's like, absolutely not. And she like Googles her and she pulls her up. She's like, oh my God, she looks incredible. And I was like, see, authoring is good for your skin.
And she started really young.
She did start very young.
Yeah,
Yeah.
both.
No, both
Yeah.
are true. She's amazing. It was so hilarious.
No, she was also one of the first D&D players ever.
Yes. Yes. Oh, she talked about that. Yeah.
And wrote it. I mean, yeah.
It's probably also
that's
partially
cool.
her fault. I bought dice also. I think I told her that.
Rocks, yeah.
But yeah, I had to buy the clicky clack rocks. So I'm also going to add Robert Jordan, because I read Wheel of Time from the early 90s on. Like, I came in, 3 books were out by the time I caught up. So I read it for the vast majority of my life. And it's that societal change. Like, one of the greatest regrets of my nerd life is going to be that we don't ever get those Outrigger books of like what happened after the turning of the age. And I will tell you, I did not realize it while I was writing Plague of Magic. But it is absolutely why the story starts where it starts, is because I am interested. This is not a spoiler. I feel like when you read the back, you'll know stuff is happening.
Yeah.
I am interested in what happens to society at the change. Like, leading up to it, yeah, cool, awesome. Wars, stuff, tension, woo.
Right.
I want that. Like, I want that moment. I want to see how it plays out, and then I want the after. So all the books, there's so many books we've been spoiled with like the sweeping epic change. And I hope we're going to get more and more of like, and then what? Because I freaking love those books. So other additions I would add just briefly are this chick, Wen Spencer, you may have heard of. She's pretty great. When I was let free in the Baen office for the first time, I was like, I only have these 3. Yoink. Like, I cleared a shelf. It was amazing. You guys, write for Baen. You can get all the books, and it's
if you go to the office.
If you go to the office. Or
you
if
have to make
really
the pilgrimage.
Yeah, or
and
you
then
just
are
hang
getting
out with
gifts.
Tony, or
Yeah.
like there are ways.
just write for Baen.
Yeah.
Just write stories. There's somebody else I really need to add, and I'm trying to, that guy, David Weber, we'll add him. The Norfressa books, I read those. I'm rereading them now. And I'm like, oh yeah, epic fantasy with like a clear good and bad character. Like, I love it. Anyway, I'll stop there.
So I'll actually jump on that, Marissa. I can't stand Robert Jordan. I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to yuck anyone's yum. Enjoy what you
can't ruin my yum. You're good.
I can't. I can't get into Robert Jordan. And I will say, on that same line of like great classic fantasy authors, David Gemmell is the author of one of the only books I've ever thrown across the room in anger at how badly it's written. Which
I need to add,
not my preference. However, I will say, and this one might get some frowny faces from the Baen crowd, but George R.R. Martin.
No.
Okay.
oh no.
Again, the guy can't finish the series to save his life, clearly. But the
intricacies of his plots.
he introduced me to the idea of stories that aren't about the characters, but are about the society and
the time,
the world in which the characters are just the conveyance. Like they're the vector by which you get to see what's happening.
It's a living history.
Right.
Living history.
that I
Yeah.
think is a big piece for it, because that's kind of once I finish up the Quinn books, that's really where I want to go. I want to write a near future sci-fi, and I want it to be sociological instead of psychological. And
Oh,
I
fun.
think that was the first series that I can think of that really introduced me to the idea of the sociological story instead of the psychological, where the characters are people who you see
Aaron,
from their perspective.
Aaron,
and
I'm sorry. I feel like Melissa's about to explode, and I need to
Oh, yeah,
know.
sorry.
She's just like, no, no, no. I am with you. That is so
Yeah.
fascinating. But also, like, she just gets closer and closer to the camera. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I love you.
Sorry, Aaron. I was not trying to interrupt. I was just
No,
being
you're fine.
Sorry, I interrupted. I had to.
Yes.
so
Yeah, on your behalf.
Because I am dragon obsessed, I cannot ignore the influence that two major series had on me. That was not Dragon Riders of Pern, because I mean that's pinnacle, right? But Naomi Novik with the Temeraire series.
Thank you.
I
Yes.
know,
Yes.
I know Marisa loves and Kacey loves, and I love that series so much because Temeraire was just as much a character as the human characters. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. And then when I think I was still like in that 7th, 8th grade, like junior high phase, when I discovered the Basil Broketail series by Christopher Rowland, I think. Rowland. Holy crap. If you have not heard of it, like it is essentially like a fantasy society where it's low magic. Like there's witches, but they're not the main focus of the story. It's like the dragons, these wyverns that were domesticated and turned into like dragons of war, which is literally one of the titles of the series. But it focuses on Basil Broketail and his dragon boy, whose whole purpose is to protect his dragon's blind spots and all these epic battles, and just like going from, you follow these characters throughout their entire military career, and then at the end, again with Marisa's point of I want to see the change. You see them march off into the sunset because they're civilians now, and I want to know what happened next. I wanted to hear about the rest of their lives, and we didn't get that. So I thought that was something cool that would be fun to play with later on.
Yeah.
Naomi,
so I'm also going to add in
Sorry.
2 more. One, Glenn Cook, the Black Company series.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that was really the first one that introduced me to the idea of like dark, gritty, like stories from the front of the war, and not like the big hero, just like the average soldier idea. Like the references to them just playing cards in between battles. And I'm like, oh damn,
Yeah.
I've been there. I played a lot
Right,
of
like, I've
spades
been
in
there.
between patrols.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned him earlier, actually, Griff, Zelazny.
Yeah.
So I actually hadn't read it. I'd heard of Zelazny my whole life, but I hadn't actually read any Zelazny until maybe 3 years ago. Mike Massa recommended Nine Princes in Amber
Oh,
to me,
Corwin.
and I picked up the whole omnibus and read through the whole thing in like 2 months. Because they're really short books. and
really good.
and
Really
no, they're
Yeah.
the imagery is phenomenal, but really what I loved about it was the uniqueness of the magic system.
Mm.
And just being able to play around with, all right, what is magic? What does it really mean? Is
Making your own reality.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
is it just this, I wave my hand and things happen? Or is it a natural force and a reflection of reality? And there are just things that we don't know within our physics.
Right.
And that actually, I think, played a lot into Blood and Fate, because that definitely comes out in that. And I definitely think that was an influence in there as I was writing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
One other thing about Naomi Novik, if you haven't read Uprooted, because Temeraire, absolutely. Kacey and I were two of her 3 first cosplayers at DragonCon one year. And then I won Uprooted from her panel, and I was like, oh, I'll just like start it in the hotel room because there's no time to read at DragonCon. Y'all, I just didn't sleep. I couldn't put it down. So talk about gorgeous prose, like just
Yeah.
oh, such a good story. Entirely different kind of dragon. But oh, I love it. Okay.
Well, one of the cool things about all of these, and this is we'll start to close down. I see people are starting to fade, especially those that had day jobs today that they were working through. But
Rude.
Yeah,
one of the
unemployment.
Great.
I'm including myself in the day job right now.
Griffin's like, it's
But
me. I would
yeah,
like
it's
to
me.
go.
It's totally me. Um, but one of the things I'd like to talk about is, we mentioned David Weber, and Aaron, I know we just got David just turned in a quote for your forthcoming novel. Does anybody have like a favorite, like their really cool statement about their books or quote that might have come forward so far?
Oh, yes, but I have to look it up. Please hold. Um, but yes,
Gwen,
from
how about you? Did you have
Sharon.
a fan of an author that you looked up to? And
Um, I'm blanking.
it has been a while. See,
Yeah.
we're starting to diminishing returns because we've been on here for so long.
Okay,
Go,
I've
Casey.
also been out of the loop since I moved to
Oh.
Hawaii 15 years ago. I haven't had a chance to interact with people. That's one of the things great about going to Dragon Con with, oh God, look, fans and other writers and hanging out and talking.
For sure.
I can't shut up when I finally interact with somebody here on the island. I'm like,
I got to chill behind when I had a broken toe situation at Dragon Con. So I was like, can I just please like creepily sit behind you during your signing? And everyone was like, yes, that's fine. She didn't even do the like, don't look at me thing. It was amazing. So I got to watch the line wrap around the dealer's hall of people so excited to meet with Wen. And while I do not have a direct quote, I do have the girl who came racing up sweaty after the signing had been over for like 5 minutes. And she was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I knew you were here, but I got stuck in the line. And you were my mom's favorite author and you were my favorite author. And she had like 3 or 4 books. And she's like, and she'll never forgive me if I don't get these signed. Do you mind? And Wen was like, of course I don't mind. And like the glow of joy on this woman's face. Like she was just the whole time, like I don't know if she was shaking, but she was definitely vibrating with energy as Wen was signing the book. She was like, I'm meeting Wen, I'm meeting Wen, I'm meeting Wen. And I was just sitting there like grinning like an idiot, like this is the cutest thing.
This last
there's
year's
career
line,
goals. Yeah.
this last year's line sucked to
Oh
get
yeah,
into
it
the
was
America's
terrible.
Art at
But
Dragon Con.
that chick, like she ran once she hit the inside.
yeah,
And she
so
was
bad
so
for
excited
her.
to see you. Yeah, I know, but she's
That's
so
why
excited to see
you gotta be
you.
friends with a vendor who's willing to come down and just bring
Right.
you in as their assistant.
Lord. But no, she
We're
persevered.
not advocating people,
We're
We're
not,
not
nope.
advocating
dodge
people jump the line.
no, we're not doing that.
Just make sure
Stop
the
getting us in
heroes,
trouble, Aaron.
correct.
No, never.
Just make sure that the heroes you are going to see are worthy of it, like Wen is, or like David
Yes.
Weber, who will be so gracious and will wait and will meet with you. And like Wen talked to her for a little while, like that woman's entire life was made. Like it was beautiful to watch. And she was just like going on about which books she loved and how they touched her and why, and like how they like changed her mom's life. And I was just like, I love everything. It was very cute.
Yeah, it was very cool.
You.
Yeah.
Casey?
I found my quote from Sharon, if you guys don't mind. It's short.
Yeah.
But she says, to put this in perspective, I named my oldest child after one of her characters.
Mhm.
So like this it has had that level of influence on, on my conception of story and character. And anyway, she said, Mage Light is a sexy, fast-paced adventure that takes time to consider the limits of love, friendship, and duty. In between the exciting action sequences and the intense character relationships, Kacey Ezell asks vital questions. How can we tell the difference between choice and compulsion? Is love as powerful as magic? And can we ever fully trust our heart's desires?
Ooh.
I read that and I also screamed. So 3 of us have
As
been
you should.
screaming like fangirls for our cover quotes.
Very cool. Melissa, did you have?
I do. I can't not read Jodi's quote after mentioning it and the whole screaming situation. In, in Rise from Ruin, Melissa Olthoff brings a new twist to Dragon Rider tales. She creates not only a believable and immersive world, but populates it with people who you can respect, understand, care for, and sometimes want to punch in the face. I love the camaraderie and the rivalries between the Dragon and Griffin Corps, and the whole punch in the face thing. I'm like, oh my God, I love Jodie so
Yeah.
much.
It was really good.
And she
great.
gets it, right? That's the
Yeah.
thing. She gets it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
good.
Aaron, how about you?
So I already mentioned I got a David Weber quote on the back cover, and that I'm still giddy about that. Like that's
yeah.
amazing. But I actually think my favorite quote about my writing is a friend of mine who actually is, for the record, he's one of the folks who fights zombies alongside Quinn in book 2. But he has on his Amazon review, he had a line that said, "If you would have liked to see Hermit Luke figure out his issues without suckling from a space manatee and turning into a pacifist, you'll probably really enjoy this book."
That's super fun.
That is funny.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, folks. I've kept you far too long. It's been almost 2 hours at this point, having to stare at my ugly mug as I talk about all these awesome books written by these awesome authors. I really appreciate you coming on the Baen Free Radio Hour to talk to us about writing and your love of it, your love of reading as well. I'm sure that your fans will be legion as we go forward, and I can say that I was one of the first, right?
Hey.
So once again, welcome to the Baen Free Radio Hour. This has been the Baen Free Radio Hour with Griffin Barber, Marisa Wolf, Melissa Olthoff, Kacey Ezell, Aaron Haskins, and Wen Spencer. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
And now, as promised, one jump ahead. John Moore is a nanotech-enhanced soldier of fortune. Lobo is an AI, a living weapons and intelligence platform of enormous destructive potential. Two very dangerous wolves in a galaxy of deadly corporate and paramilitary predators. But Moore has grown weary of the killing, and just once he'd like to finish the job without leaving a trail of blood behind him. Not going to happen. Not on a pristine planet called Macon, where two gigantic corporations vie for control of the local jump gate and access to the riches of an undeveloped world. Dealing with a kidnapping and extortion scheme is only the beginning for Moore and Lobo as they work to stay one jump ahead.
Chapter 4. Kelko had definitely paid more to rent Slake's house than I had spent on mine. The glass and wood building squatted in the middle of a huge lot ringed on the non-ocean sides by tall native trees. To the left, as I approached the front, partially hidden by a thin strand of forest, a heavily armed corporate transport squatted on a large private landing area big enough to easily accommodate 6 or 8 ships of Lobo's size. If Calco hadn't installed the landing facilities, the house's owners had to be optimists, hoping to attract the serious corporate crowd. The building reflected the same level of ambition, 3 stories tall with porches facing the ocean on every level. It was big enough that you could comfortably fit mine in the corner of a single floor. Either Slake had a large staff living with him, or he was the type who always chose the most expensive accommodations available so everyone would be acutely aware of how much money he had. I concluded that his motivation included a bit of both factors, because when he opened the door, he didn't even take the time to greet me before 4 men, 3 clearly built for trouble, took the still unconscious girl away from me and carried her upstairs. "I want a doctor to check her out immediately," he said. My curiosity about the goons must have shown, because he added, "And I won't let her be without bodyguards again." He motioned me through a pair of open doors on the right into a large front room with a lovely view of the ocean. I sat in a chair that let me enjoy the sight of the waves breaking, poured some water from a pitcher on a side table, and waited. Slake closed the room's doors behind him, then asked, "How is she?" "As near as I can tell, she's drugged, but otherwise okay." "Did she say if they hurt her?" "She was in no shape to talk," I said. "She was unconscious when I found her. She woke up once, thanked me, started to say something about you, and passed out again, that's all." He relaxed a little. "If she didn't say anything bad had happened," he said, "then nothing probably did." Only someone who's never experienced anything truly terrible could possibly believe that, but I saw no point in correcting him. If that belief helped him cope with his daughter's kidnapping, I'd let him cling to it. "Thank you," he said. "I apologize for not saying that immediately." "No problem." "Out of curiosity," he said, "how'd you do it?" I stood. "That's not part of the deal. I brought her back. I'm done. Now, hold up your end." I stepped so close to him that we were almost touching. Our eyes were nearly level, and I didn't look away. I doubt he often experienced anyone invading his personal space so directly. "We have an agreement. The fact that Jasmine is home tells you everything about me you ever need to know." I flushed with anger. I take my deals very, very seriously. I fought for control as I said, "Do your part, and I'll get out of your hair and off this planet." He stepped back. Of course. He walked over to a desk in the room's corner, and a display leapt to life above it. "Please forgive my behavior. Chalk it up to a father's natural curiosity and protectiveness." He turned to the display, which appeared as a thin blue line from my angle, and said, "Pay Mr. Moore what we agreed." A few seconds later, a low voice from the area of the display said something I couldn't quite make out. Slake clearly understood it and nodded his head. Turning back to me, he said, "It's done."
This has been the Baen Free Radio Hour. Thanks for joining us at the heart of science fiction. Join us next week for part 14 of One Jump Ahead by Mark Van Name, and Jeremy Comu interviews Rick Spohr on his and Eric Flint's collaboration, Fenrir. Score by Ruth Judkowitz.